All right, we are now live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, and welcome to Chattering with Nicholas Vince. And this week I'm going to be chattering with Ben Steiner and Dan Dixon from The Stomach. Gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hello, I'm Ben Steiner. I'm the writing, directing half of Fume Films, and yeah, we put out most recently The Stomach short film, which has been doing the rounds for about 18 months. Excuse me.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm not excusing the film for the burp that you didn't hear.
I'm Dan Dixon, producer at Fume Films.
Cool. All right. So we'll kind of explore a little bit more about that in Fume Films, obviously, is the company behind this. Before we do that, I just want to remind people, as I've been doing every week, that my short film, The Night Whispered.
Oh, I see.
I am completely shameless about the Night Whispered. I've seen the second assembly now. I saw the first assembly a week or so ago. I've now seen the second assembly. It's beginning to look very good. That will be going into festivals. I'll be submitting that in January, hopefully. Once we've got
Nicholas, tell us, what is your short film called?
It is called The Night Whispered.
Right.
And we shot it 3 weeks ago. So we're actually going on great guns, and I've heard some great music. And everyone who's seen, well, when I say everyone, myself and the editor, because we're the only ones who've really seen it, and a mate of mine who I showed, one of the actors in it, I showed him the first assembly as well. It's looking very good. It's still got some technical difficulties because, when you film in a night that is 0 degrees, you don't get quite all the shots you had originally intended. So that's, yeah, it's been quite interesting. But I'll ask you a little bit more about that. And then I just want to remind people as well that Chris Alexander, recently the editor of Fangoria, now running Shock Till You Drop. Yeah, Shock Till You Drop website, and plus doing a lot of other things in filmmaking and so on. Chris will be with me on the 3rd of January. We'll talk more about that later. So, okay, so let's concentrate on you guys. How did you guys meet?
Dan, I think that's a story for you to tell.
So there's a quick version. It's like, hey, we met socially, which is true. But I was going out with somebody who was friends with Ben's wife, essentially. So in one way, you could say Ben and I met through a dating website, which is true. There's a bit of a journey to get into that, but yeah, it's true.
So you're basically through mutual friend, and then were you both making films when you met, or is this something that just came out of the meeting saying, hey, let's go and make movies?
So yeah, in kind of different ways. I mean, speaking for myself, so I'd been making shorts and producing them for about 12 years prior to meeting Dan, and producing them myself with varying levels of success. It's a lot of plates to spin. And I think as my sort of ambition was kind of growing, the need for not only a producer but a kind of a proper sort of partner grew as well. So it was actually very kind of fortuitous timing from my point of view. So I sort of came to the relationship with the Stomach script, and so it was very good timing from my point of view.
Okay, so you'd already written The Stomach. Okay, but you said that you've been making films for about 12 years. Did you train? Did you go to film school?
No. So I used to do a lot of. I just used to draw and do kind of painting and that kind of art, and then just kind of hit a bit of a kind of brick wall in terms of my technical ability. Had spent a year going a bit mad, just sort of doing the same compositional sketch again and again and again with very, very small differences. And then I actually never even did the piece. I just kind of got pissed off with drawing and just thought I'm just going to try and do something else. And so I mean, on the first day of my first shoot, I literally didn't know how to turn the monitor on. I didn't really kind of know anything, and just yeah, just sort of went for it really.
And when you say the first day of your first shoot, was it literally, were you doing the whole thing? Were you
No, no, no,
cameraman,
no.
director?
I'm technically a shambles. So I mean, I write and direct and storyboard myself and that kind of thing. But I don't shoot or edit or anything like that.
So you were working with a crew of some size, were
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Okay. And do those films still exist, or have they ever done
Yeah,
anything?
some of them do. Man with the Fork is my first film, which I'm sure we'll probably get onto this later, but that's got quite a direct. Although there's about 4 films in between Man with a Fork and The Stomach, there's a kind of quite a direct line sort of between the two of them. But anyway, that's my first short film, and that is possibly online somewhere. And if it's not, I'll I don't know. Maybe I'll kind of make it public. Because I know it's online, but I think it's password protected. So maybe I'll kind of unprotect it for a little while if anybody's interested, which they're probably not. But I'll just.
It sounds very interesting. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
And Dan, what about yourself? Did you have any background in film when you met Ben?
Yeah, so I'd been working in visual effects, in production visual effects for a number of years, and then most recently I was at the Imaginarium, which is Andy Serkis's motion capture company in Ealing.
Oh, right.
So I was working there, and I was working on like the last Avengers film and Godzilla and things like that, and also being at the other visual effects houses, and just there are films that you end up working on, a lot of Hollywood sort of films, and that was great. It taught me a lot of things, but it didn't satisfy something else, which was like that burning ambition to be doing something else. And I had made films years ago when I was at university with some friends, and I'd really liked their content. So going back to that thing about the meeting, for me it was I hadn't really read anything, so I've been reading bits and pieces in the intervening years, or scripts that friends had had or they're producing, and I hadn't read anything that connected for me or I liked. And so as soon as I read Ben's script and I had seen his previous films, instantly I was like, I want to be working with Ben. It just felt like a instant thing for me, for sure.
That's very interesting. I have another friend who works with Andy Serkis at Imaginarium as well. And so, Ben, you had already written the script.
Yeah.
And this is obviously one of those fated meetings where everything just kind of drops together. And the first question that I've had come in from our friend Kelly, who regularly watches, The Stomach was a fabulously unique idea. What in the world triggered the idea for this story?
Thank you very much. What's his name again?
Her name is Kelly.
Sorry, her name. Thank you, Kelly. We got there quicker than I expected. So this brings us back to Man with the Fork. So Man with the Fork is about a cannibal human meat salesman who gets.
Just run that one past me again.
So he's a salesman. He's like a door-to-door salesman. He's got a briefcase, but it's full of human body parts, and he meets people under bridges and whatnot, and sells them, baby lung or whatever it might be out of this briefcase. And he himself is a cannibal as well. So I guess he makes the first mistake of any kind of dealing, which is he partakes of his own supply, and through that he gets kuru, which is the shaking disease, which apparently cannibals get. Yep. It's rife in Papua New Guinea among the cannibal tribes there, apparently. And he dies basically. So I was just kind of ruminating on that, kind of several films down the line, just thinking about Man with the Fork, and was just thinking about how just a kind of a what if. So what if instead of this kind of quite true to life demise that this character has. So what if instead of being kind of degenerating in that way, what if he were in some way kind of being tormented by the spirits of the people that he'd eaten? In some way he absorbed their souls or their spirits, while kind of digesting their flesh. So then the idea of someone being kind of haunted from the inside, just kind of melded with some stuff that I was reading at the time, namely a book called Beyond Black by Hilary Mantel, who wrote, I don't actually read very much, it was one of these weird moments of my life where I just happened to, I went through a kind of a few-month period of reading a lot for me, which is 3 books, and it all kind of mixed up. But anyway, Beyond Black by Hilary Mantel, who wrote Wolf Hall, which is an amazing book about a spirit medium, but it's all this kind of really her backstory is very dark, very kind of abusive. She has this kind of spirit guide who's this really sort of creepy, grubby, sort of nicotine-stained character who kind of lives in the kind of the folds of sort of tea cloths and curtains and stuff, and her kind of her life, she's kind of obese and her own life is quite sort of depressing. That book, and then the Factory novels by an English crime writer who's dead now, I think, called Derek Raymond. And they're all kind of set in the 80s, and again, like everything's very grimy and sort of depressing, and so that kind of underworld in kind of both senses, kind of sort of mixed up with this kind of thinking about Man with a Fork, and then turned into the Stomach.
Oh,
so that was quite rambling. Did that make sense? I felt like I was going on for ages.
That made a little sense with what it is about the Stomach. And I suppose we should warn people, and I'm getting a little bit of feedback here.
I guess the part of that thought is that just kind of what if thing. So it's like, what if instead of contracting a disease, what if you were haunted by what you're consuming? And then it's just where that extends onto.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So so you had this idea. You wrote the script.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to concentrate on Ben for a little bit just before the meeting. You wrote the script. How many drafts had you done before you showed it to Dan?
I can't remember, quite a few, but also it had been quite a few years in between me writing it and meeting Dan, because I made the Flea, which you can see on the internet.
This is another short film.
Anyway, my previous film, The Flea, I actually made in between. I wrote The Stomach, for whatever reason, put that down, then made The Flea, and then kind of came back to the Stomach. But I don't think I'm not like loads and loads of drafts, but but it had been kind of around for many years. A good 5 years, possibly more than that.
Right. So here's a question. I'm going to ask you kind of what you think of the other person's roles, and I'm going to start with Dan. Dan, what do you think? So you met Ben.
This is like Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah. Olives. Hates olives. So.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you think of as, obviously you admired and you liked the script when you saw it. What do you think of as the role of the director as a producer? What is it you're looking for in this case, a writer director?
I guess it's hard to answer without straight cliche, but overridingly, it's like vision. It's something with a unique voice, and something which I don't think I was, as I kind of mentioned about reading previous scripts, I wasn't reading anything that was exciting me. So there's that kind of sense of excitement when you're reading it on the page. It's that you're kind of it's making you want to read more and question things, and seeing really well sort of drawn out characters and having a uniqueness of a central idea, I guess. That was the thing that kind of really resonated with me, and it was this strength and the kind of the pointedness of the writing. So the dialogue bits were brilliant, and often you can read dialogue and it's just so twee and horrible. When you're reading really good quality dialogue, it excited me to read it. So at that point, from the page, if that's answering the question, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That definitely answers the question.
But I think, and then from the meeting, it's the drive of the person. So the what's coming from the person, their sort of ambition and their drive and the intent behind it was really important.
Oh, that's interesting. So what you're saying is that basically it is as much to do with the, you know, because you read a script, but it is really the person behind it,
yeah,
and whether or not they're going to be able to carry it through or convince you that they can.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's as kind of judgmental as that, but it's just kind of getting a feel for like this is going to be a long thing that we're going to be working on, and we're investing ourselves in it, and that you can feel a belief in the other person that you're both driving in the same direction and both want to achieve the same things.
Okay, so and okay, so let me flip the question. Ben, what is it that you look for in a producer? You said you were juggling too many plates in your previous productions. Yeah. What was it you were looking for, hoping that Dan would be able to bring to the party?
Well, because I think so. Dan, you need to put your earmuffs on. So I think I really lucked out with Dan, because I think on a basic level, what I was kind of hoping for at a kind of bare minimum was just like please God, just someone who can do all the stuff that I can't do, you know, all the stuff that is kind of, you know, that I'm letting myself down with, you know. So there's almost like the sort of the fundamentals of you know, kind of what what kind of a producer's role is, in just, you know, in the kind of most, you know, kind of basic way, which obviously Dan has in spades. But then far more than that, there's the drive that, you know, that Dan's talking about, which I kind of found in him as well. Just really wanting to kind of do something fresh and new and a real. Just not like, let's just make some films, because that's the thing that people do, isn't it? People make films. Let's do that. Like, let's make something really unique and really kind of special and really push to kind of achieve that. But then on top of that, you know, as you'll see on the credits of The Stomach, when you go to fumefilms.com and buy it, you'll see that you know, so Dan co-edited The Stomach. You know, so like a lot of the really kind of flair bits of editing are Dan's. You know, and yeah, and you know, and then kind of, I guess, in a sort of a general way, you know, it just feels like a genuine, you know, partnership. So I'm you know, the kind of, you know, I write the scripts and I'm the director, but it's, you know, it's very much a kind of a sparring and kind of, what about this, and, you know, and then Dan will, you know, it's just you know, it's the roles are defined up to a point, but yeah, it's a great partnership. You know, which is, so in answer to your question, I actually got a lot more with Dan than I was hoping for, because at that point, had I met someone who could just produce at a kind of a basic level, I probably would have been like, you know, grabbed onto them with both hands like a sort of a drowning man. So thank Christ someone can, you know, help me get this stuff made. But actually, it's you know, a completely different league to that.
Oh, so that's. Yeah, so it really is that thing, as you said, as you described it, it's a partnership, basically. That you know, there's a toing and froing, and there's a conversation happening between the two of you in that case. Okay, so in terms, so that's kind of, you've decided, okay, let's go out and make a movie.
Yeah.
Who found the locations and who found the cast? How did that all work?
I mean, we could bore the shit out of people watching this and go through every part, which we won't do. So some of the core cast. So do you know what? I can tell you things that I found, and then everything else is Dan. So, Simon, who's the lead in the Stomach, he's a really good friend of mine. Who's also, you know, he's an actor. He's in Outlander, and he was just in Peep Show actually. He's a real actor. And I worked with him quite a lot on previous films, including The Flea and the film before that, and the film before that. And Peter, who plays Mr. Pope, Peter Marinka, I found weirdly, I saw him by complete fluke, and that role, Mr. Pope, was probably, I think, the hardest one to cast. And he was in a trailer for a film that has yet to be made, by a friend of mine called Dominic Helston, who's an amazing director and visual effects guy who made a brilliant short. It's quite old now, called The Eel, which I think is probably just on YouTube, which is quite amazing. Sort of quite Chris Cunningham-esque in a lot of ways. Anyhow, so Peter was just in this trailer for this film called The Man Everyone Hated, which is just a brilliant title. And I just saw Peter in that trailer. I was just like, that's Mr. Pope. I need that man. And I think.
And then he turned up, right? You met him, and he was just more to the.
Yeah, and he was literally basically wearing the outfit that he's wearing in the film. But anyhow, so I think apart from Simon and Peter, and Kiki, who plays Gloria. I think Dan found the locations.
Ben Bishop had been a friend of Simon's. They were theatre school together.
Yeah.
But I also
Ben was working at the Imaginarium as well.
Yeah, he was doing quite a bit there, and Neil Newborn had also come into Imaginarium, doing some motion captures. So it was interesting. So there's a lot of sort of sending it out to agents, and we ended up coming back round to kind of like the inner circle. So what is it we know, which we're getting access to, and then the locations. I think we were fortunate, and it's a big thank you to Hammersmith Council. We were able to get some great locations from them. We thought there's a lot of looking for that. That took a lot of time. Unsuccessful, wasted days of just looking at things. Right. So, and
you remember going and looking at places with people from different councils or different people from the same council who hadn't really grasped that we were, making a short film with our own money, and would show us a place and go, yeah, so that's what would it be like? Yeah, that's £1,000 a day, or that's like, it was just some, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Amount of money, but Don Bartels, who's the DOP, who I think did an amazing job, and I really enjoyed working with. Dan found him. Dan, the guy, Dickon Marshall, who did the score, is an old friend of Dan's. Just reel him off. Dan got them all.
So you're talking about the finding of the locations and so on. So what was your biggest challenge during filming for the both of you? And I'm assuming it's possibly the same thing, or is it something different? What did you find most challenging during the filming?
I've had a couple of beers. I'm going to say it. I found the first AD was my biggest challenge in making this film. Because one of the things that I was really looking forward to on working on like a properly produced, it wasn't like a massive crew, but it was the first time it's been for me it was a proper production, where I wasn't making the sandwiches in the lunch break kind of thing. Was having the sort of basically someone kind of telling me what I was doing next. And that kind of, all that kind of stuff that First AD is meant to do, and I don't want to, in the incredibly unlikely event that he's watching this, I don't want to kind of slam him too hard. We didn't really have that. But in terms of which just meant that kind of things went on, things took longer than they should have done, and that the reason I bring it up in all seriousness is because that's such an important role. And then things took longer than they should have done. Things started running late. People started getting pissed off. Then all that kind of stuff. But in terms of working with the actors, prosthetics, locations, stuff like that.
Prosthetics, right? Yeah.
It wasn't. It was. The hiccups that you always have, but it went very well.
But I guess, and that comes back down to. Fortunately, we had Dom, and fortunately, with his experience and ability, we could just work around that shortfall. We could pick up the slack between us. That was fortunate. And I guess for my side, it's if we're talking about the production as a whole, post. There's some bits of post which were great, like the sound mix was brilliant. That was amazing. But other bits just kind of felt they took longer. And it was just like visual effects was quite a hard thing to nail down, and especially since we had such amazing prosthetics within the film, they really needed to live up to what was going on in camera already. So we rejected quite a lot of what was kind of happening. We had to kind of switch tack halfway through, and so that just took a lot of. It's maintaining that kind of belief in what you want and that pursuit of like this has to be excellent. We only want to do this once. So if something wasn't right, we had to change it.
This is very interesting. Okay, so I mean, there's two questions here. Then there's how many shooting days did you have?
Three and a half.
3.5. Yeah, we had it was going to be 3.5 day pickup. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So 3.5 shooting days, and then how long did you spend on post production?
Ben.
Do you
probably in the month.
actual days, or how long was the post period? Because the post production period was like, I don't know, 5 months. It was a long time. I can't to be. I mean, as you can probably tell, I can't really remember. But from the last shooting day till having a finished product, that would have been 6 months, because that half day pickup was just before Christmas 2013. Yeah,
Right.
and then the film was ready in like end of June or something, 2014.
Right, it was our first festival, and we've been saying sort of not quite finished. Yeah.
Which was your first festival?
It was the Grossman Wine and Genre Festival.
Where was that?
That was in Slovenia.
This is the one you were telling about.
Yeah.
You were telling me about.
It was like a tiny town you kind of land in the airport and you drive up for a few hours past all the mountains. And it's a festival where they have wine, because it's a big wine growing region, and genre. But there is a cinema there, but it's like the sort of town which has one hotel, one restaurant, which is also within the hotel, and it's quite sort of ramshackle and random. And then they had the wine queen, nominated wine queen, sort of turning up wearing pretty much a wedding dress. So it was just like, for my first festival, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. I didn't know how many we were going to get into, so I was flying to Slovenia, driving up there, and then just, some, when you like, have a screening and then you realise it's outside a hotel on like a pop-up thing, and there's like some really drunk people there, and the sound of some smashing beer bottles and that sort of thing. So it was pretty random, but I loved doing it, and it kind of just set me on the road for wanting to see more, wanting to go to a lot more.
Okay, well, we'll talk a little bit more about festivals in a minute, if we may. Actually, a gentleman called Matt Novak has tweeted that the stomach screen this year at Deadfest.
Yes, with our friend Derek Clayton, I think in. That's Edmonton, right?
It is Edmonton. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Matt's a regular viewer of this show, and ever since I met the guys who are doing the web series Straight to Video, which is a brilliant web series, absolutely superb web series, which I really enjoyed. Okay, so it took 6 months. Gosh, that does seem like an awfully long time.
There's that kind of thing involved as well. You're kind of fitting it around normal life. So maybe it seems more extended than if you were to compress the time and sort of, being entirely focused.
But also, you were saying that you were rejecting stuff. How much VFX is there? Because I just assumed it was all done prosthetic.
So there's the stomach prosthetic itself. Is a prosthetic which was done by Dan Martin, who is Ben Wheatley's regular guy, and he did he did an amazing job, and obviously he's brilliant at what he does. In terms of VFX on the stomach itself, that was just removing the seam between the prosthetic and the actor, because obviously the dressing gown is open, and then you've got this prosthetic that goes from just below the waistband of the pajamas to sort of just kind of under the nipple, so kind of removing that line in quite a few shots. But there's a shot where of a head wound that's kind of oozing blood and brains. That's created completely from scratch. So that was just a shot of just a guy lying on some stairs with his arm thrown up across his face.
My boss.
Sorry?
My boss.
Yeah, that's boss at the time. So that was created from scratch. And then the gunshot at the end, which I'll try and not say loads about for anyone who hasn't seen it, but the impact of that gunshot at the end, again, that was, though there was a little bit of prosthetic from Dan Martin, the the kind of explosion of blood and the blood on the walls and all of that, again, was all post, and that was John Hardwick, is it that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he did a great job. But it comes back to that thing of drive, just kind of pushing on and on, because we were being told, by people, so we had a guy looking at it, and he was, we said, we want X, and he would say, yeah, that's actually impossible, that cannot be done. And luckily, because Dan has a background in visual effects, wasn't taking no for an answer, and then we kind of shopped around a bit, and then we're lucky enough to find John, who showed that it wasn't in fact possible.
Okay, so you got through this thing. You've obviously had a lot of time on this. You've got the product. You've got the film that to the level of which that you want it to be, and it looks sumptuous. Not sumptuous, not the word. It looks kind of gritty.
Sumptuously gritty.
Yeah, sumptuous is entirely the wrong word. It looks wonderful, though. I mean, it has this great look to it.
Thank you.
Then you started your first festival you got into was Slovenia.
Yeah.
Now, I think, have I got this right? How many festivals has it actually screened at?
Dan?
We've got a couple of screenings coming up in the new year, but all told, it's around 150 screenings. So some of those festivals screen it twice, but it's in that kind of region. Yeah.
That's an extraordinary achievement. So how many? I mean, most people, because I think one of I look at that and I think that must have cost an awful lot of money to actually. Is that?
Well, the cost of submission and all the associated, some of the deliverables you have to make for it as well. But then trying to turn those screenings into being more meaningful for us. So you have to attend, really, the ones which are like headline festivals, which you really want to go to. So the cost just kind of escalates. But it's almost part of that through line of, like, if we're making this film excellent, as best to our ability as we can, then everything is, not as important, but it's just kind of, it has to be part of that same thought for everything that happens afterwards. Otherwise, it could sit there and not play in any festivals, and that has kind of opened up a world of momentum. So it's the film, the making of the film. So the energy didn't drop off after believe it's kind of that same drive has to kind of push it through for the next 2 years or whatever it is.
That's interesting. I was curious. I mean, without giving numbers away necessarily, in terms of a kind of percentage-wise, it sounds to me as if the cost of actually attending the screenings was bigger than the actual budget for the film itself. Is that right?
No.
I don't think it's bigger, but we had the things that we really needed to spend money on camera. So prosthetics was a thing that we spent a bit on. They were expensive, but it was something we felt, and it's justified that that's the thing to spend on. But it's up there. It's in the kind of thousands. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then, as you say, that's just the submissions as well.
Yeah. But it's given what it's bought us. It's kind of that has become, how much it costs is kind of insignificant, and what we've gained from it.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you've seen you're definitely seeing the benefit of it. And is that just in terms of the people you've met and the connections you've made?
I think it's the scene is such a tight-knit one, and one that's very involved. So a lot of the journalists who are writing for genre and horror, they'll be attending sort of big festivals, headline festivals. There's a lot of fandom based around the people who are involved, as well as just the fans, because that's their starting point. That's why they get into that industry, I guess. So it's given us that kind of avenue into conversation and chat and awareness of what Ben and I are doing, so that when we are working and developing our feature films, it feels like the stomach has performed in such a way that introductions have already been done to us.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And so, when you, if we go to kind of wind back a bit, so that you did your first festival in Slovenia, how much marketing did you do for the film? What sort of marketing did you do? Or did you do social media? Did you tweet about it? How did you, or was it just a question of getting it out to a few festivals to begin with, and then just supplying posters, or what sort of marketing did you
So I
do?
think we were really lucky in that we had kind of a champion, I guess, of the stomach quite early on in the form of Sam Zimmerman, who used to write for Fangoria, and I think he's now Shudder, which is the American horror, it's US only, kind of horror streaming service. And so when we got into Fantastic Fest, he did sort of like a preview of the stomach and an interview with me, and obviously that. Sorry.
They sponsored the shorts, I think.
So they sponsored the short fuse, like the horror short section of Fantastic Fest. So I think that just kind of immediately kind of got a lot of eyes on it, and that was again that was Fantastic Fest was kind of relatively early in our kind of our festival run, and we were lucky enough to win that, and then that just kind of it all just kind of started to kind of ramp up from there. So yeah, we were just kind of quite fortunate with we've had kind of just kind of fans and champions who've been quite vocal about it. So we kind of had that's been kind of working for us, and then we're sort of nominally on Facebook, but not really. But we're on Twitter a lot, and find that's a great tool just for getting out there. And then we had the poster artwork people just kind of into from a sort of design, I suppose, point of view. So that's kind of so we've had kind of different strands that we've been able to kind of sort of talk about and just kind of keep interest kind of going along.
Now, am I right, Ben, in thinking that you did the poster artwork?
Yeah.
Because
sorry.
Because I was saying you showed me some of your artwork and your graphic design work.
Yeah, so that's kind of I was saying at the beginning of this, like my route into filmmaking was kind of hitting this kind of sort of artist's block, for want of a better phrase, and kind of giving it up, and then it's just but it's still there, and I'm still kind of doing it in the background, and so I mean that poster was. I kind of did a collage. It's incredibly old school. I had Simon Meekop, who plays the lead in the stomach, got him to text me a photo of himself screaming, which I printed off, cut out, stuck on a picture of. It's like the inside of a gorilla's rib cage. I think is the that image of the ribs in the background.
Yeah.
And, basically, I just kind of just printed out 3 things, black and white. Literally, cut them out, glued them on to a thing that was about A4, scanned it in, and then gave it to a great designer that I know who kind of sexed it up with all of the. I think it's called halftone. That sort of blown up photocopy, kind of grainy, pixelated effect, and whatnot. But yeah, we bumped into, is it Abraham, Dan, from Morbido Fest? Is that right? He was apparently people kept on nicking that. I mean, it was great to hear. People kept on stealing the poster for the stomach, and they kept on having to print them off and stick them back up, which is So either the poster for the stomach is all over Mexico, or there's one guy with kind of 200 stomach posters wallpapering his bedroom. He's clearly a psychopath. But,
well, I guess the other part of that answer is so it's the social media side, and the festival run allowed us to constantly have news about what we're doing. So that kind of the thing about Ben runs the Twitter, but I guess from what I've observed and what I've learned, the thing about it is like there's no point using it unless you've got something to kind of say. So having a really good run has allowed us to be saying something which is like, it's news, this is stuff that's happening, so it's kind of had that benefit. But part of that as well for us was quite quickly, I think the conversation probably happened towards maybe in the middle of post or something like that, about brand and about how we were going to be branding the film, and then the content. Because we were really confident in the film once we shot it and we started making it, and it's like, this is, this whole drive and the push of what we want to do. So having a brand has allowed us to kind of fulfill some of that that part, I guess. It's like, that's our intention, I hope anyway, that it kind of becomes a recognition of something that's kind of trusted, if you like, the stomach, and other things that we'll be working on. You should, identify with or like, or find something in that you'll appreciate.
That's very interesting. And speaking of Twitter, we've actually had a couple of tweets come in whilst we've been talking. The first is from a lady called Kim Lehman. Ben and Dan, are you more of a fan of practical effects than CGI? And would you be opposed to using CGI in your films?
I think, I'm speaking for myself. I'm definitely more of a fan of practical effects. I wouldn't be. It's not that I would be averse, but so in something like the stomach, so Dan and I discussed different approaches to realizing the stomach itself, and because there's so much interaction between the between other characters and the stomach, the idea that there would be, there'd be kind of nothing there, or that you'd be getting into kind of miming around it, or kind of what have you. It just felt like it wasn't going to work. And I think from my point of view, when if I'm kind of looking into the monitor on the day, I kind of want to be able to see as much of what the thing is ultimately going to be on screen as possible, kind of through the monitor. So there's definitely a place for both, and different people work in different ways. But I think that's my my preference.
Augmenting and supporting the practical is the best way, I think, for sure.
This is interesting because, of course, you work for the Imaginarium. And is it just because it is just so much?
Back out of that one, Dan.
Well, in some ways, there's an argument to be made for. There's a similarity there anyway. So, say at the Imaginarium, although something could be a CG character, the whole through line of that company is that it's about something that's authored. So it's the CG characters kind of augmenting a performance from a actor who's driving the thing. So it's kind of, if something is augmenting and helping realize something that you're doing, in our case, in a film with a prosthetic stomach, the prosthetic. But it's kind of, real things are kind of hero and all this sort of thing. So in Imaginarium, it's the performance, it's the authorial intent from the performer should be driving it through. So although I do work there, I think, and my preference is for, absolutely, I agree with Ben, for prosthetics, and there's real room for just the visual effects to help it. I think there's kind of a similarity to kind of say at the Imaginarium how they see things. Sure.
But then while Dan was talking, I was just thinking. But then there's a shot at the end of the stomach, which is almost entirely VFX, without revealing what it is. We basically couldn't have done, at least within our means, our resources, any other way apart from VFX. So and it's a very quick shot, but we just couldn't have done it. So I guess, like I said, there's obviously room for both. Yeah. But if we look kind of where possible, my preference is for.
It's the practical consideration of what is going to help that moment the most. So in the case of a stomach, the thing that's going to help that moment, the director being able to see it on camera, the actors being able to interact with it, the thing that would help that the most is to have it there.
Yeah.
In that other example you're talking about, the thing that would help all of us in that moment there was to not have anything practical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely understand that, and I think it is the extraordinary thing that we can do with CGI and performance, and actually capturing that performance and putting it, obviously most famously with Andy Serkis with Gollum, that you can see that, well, not just that, but King Kong and all the other amazing performances he's done, that you can actually see the expression and the character really comes through. And it's much easier for an actor to be able to do that without thinking, I've got, well, in my pet case, back in the 1980s, half an inch of foam latex on your face, to be actually able to. But it's a different way of performing.
So it's just whatever fits the thing that you're working on at the time. Like that fit for what they do. That's a bit of fit for us at the moment. Is that being said, we might be working on something at some point that will need a bunch of matte painting to make something look historical, say, and that'll be a lot of visual effect and a lot, that'll really, that's vital to tell that story, So you just make a call based on what's
and what's practically and what is affordable, and what's there is always going to be those kind of discussions as to what how that's going to work. Okay, there's another question come in from Twitter as well. The hashtag, folks, to remind you, is hashtag chattering Nick. This is from Joe, and Joe, who is right. I was thinking it said FX. No, I think it says Joe TX13. I'm curious about how filmmakers come up with ideas. What is your process for coming up for films? So what is your process for coming up?
So no, no process at all. Just trying to absorb stuff. Be it through. I mentioned my kind of very brief spurt of reading, which kind of helped to kind of give birth to the stomach, so to speak. But yeah, there's no. I mean, I don't have any particular process. I wish I'm not sure anyone has a process for coming up with the actual the core idea itself. Obviously, lots of people have a process for writing. I wish I did. My process is I sit in front of a laptop, wasting time and procrastinating for 90% of the day. So I just try and be in front of the laptop for as much of the day as possible, so that tiny percentage of time where I do something useful is maximized. But yeah, I think it's just being just kind of keeping your eyes and ears open and just absorbing stuff from
installations. Was there installation?
No. Sorry, Dan?
Was there an installation you went to and that kind of triggered thought about something?
Yeah. Like it's a good point, because a lot of the things that have inspired me most have not been films. Have been kind of art installations or books or plays or just conversations or kind of whatever. But it's so I think it's trying to be quite this is a terrible word, quite omnivorous in the kind of things you absorb. I think if you're a filmmaker, for example, and you only watch films, then that there's a danger that will show in the films that you make, because then they may possibly look like a bunch of other films. But I think it's good to try and be broad.
It's interesting because I've read authors talking about the fact that mostly they read non-fiction. Rather than fiction. They obviously read fiction because I think particularly when you're starting out as a writer, you need to read an awful lot of fiction just to kind of work out how stories are told and how sentences and paragraph, etc. And it's the same for filmmakers.
And also to have it's a difficult balance, because obviously you need to watch stuff to learn, to see what can be done, what you don't want to do, what you like and don't like, and all of that. So it's I think it's obviously I watch a lot of films, but I try not to only watch a lot of films.
It's interesting. I remember when I was, and as a writer as well, the tip I always picked up is the way to get through writer's block is just research. Just go away and read them. And I don't do it so much now because it's all kind of online. I use Evernote now, but I used to have a big, thick folder. Use paper clippings. Just interesting news, and they just that might be useful, and then just shove it in a folder. And just flip through it every so often, and just think, that's kind of, no, there is an idea there. There is something there that's kind of interesting. What you can then run with that ball and play with it and so on. Okay, well, so I think that you've now got the stomach is online. People can watch The Flea at fumefilms.com. What is your thought we were losing you for a moment.
Sorry, no, I dropped something on the floor.
So what are you working on now, and what are your future plans, and what else is happening?
Yeah, so I mean, we have we want to make our first feature next, and so we have 4 projects that we're developing. One and if you go onto fumefilms.com, you can find like a one-line summary of each one of them and some other bits and bobs. One of them is a featured version of The Stomach, which that's actually been quite interesting to write, because part of that process is kind of working out what I do differently this time. So you've got to be being quite critical of the short. And trying to expand it in a way that doesn't just fill in the blanks of the short. Because I think one of the things that people like, I think, about the short is that there's a lot of things that are referred to or alluded to that you don't see. So it's wall-to-wall dialogue, but it's always something that has happened or will happen, but not what's happening now. And so kind of staying true to what people like about the short, or what we think is good about the short, but kind of taking it somewhere else. So we think we've kind of achieved that with the script. So a feature version of the Stomach, and then 3 other feature films. We've got a kind of a take on a haunted house film called Dead Windows. A sort of occult amnesiac thriller called Mr. Sundown, and then a project called The Highgate Vampires, which is an account of a very interesting real life. I'm going to choose my words carefully here. A case, some events that occurred in kind of late 60s, early 70s London, involving a reputed vampire in Highgate Cemetery.
Which sounds very, very interesting. Which sounds very good. I'm just going to put a quick, before we wind this up, I'm just going to just double check if there's anybody who would like to come on live and ask a question with these guys. If there's anybody else wanting to ask any more questions, do please just let me know. Just tweet it, or what am I trying to say? Oh, activities on Google Plus, which are being monitored downstairs by Craig. If there's anything you want to ask these guys, do please chime in. So those are things. I think there was one question I asked you, what the most challenging part of doing The Stomach was, but what's your favourite memory of The Stomach? This has been out on the road now for 18 months since you put this live, but if you cast your minds back to the filming, the preparation, and so on, what was your most fun moment during all that time, either from a festival or during the filming or the preparation, or?
Wow. I mean, I don't know if fun is something that really happens on a 3-day shoot when you're running horribly over time and desperately trying to get everything in the camp.
On the shoot, it's like seeing Dan pay the pipes of.
Oh yeah, yeah. Dan Martin, the prosthetics guy, and his assistant Liam, I think it was called, were operating the airbags in the stomachs, to kind of create the kind of undulating effects through mouth. Mouth operated kind of pipes. They were kind of squatting out of shot, kind of playing this weird kind of bagpipe made of kind of like a marigold rubber glove and various pipes going out of it, which was quite interesting. I would just the festival run. We've had a blast. We've made loads of friends, including our mutual friend Andy Stewart. With whom we instigated the human pyramid at Celluloid Twin. Now that's officially,
I'm so glad I managed to get away before you did that.
Yeah, that's now officially a tradition, because if it happens once, it's a sort of freak event. And I think if it happens twice, that's now a thing. It's been great. Just kind of really kind of plugging into that scene, which, although I'd been speaking for myself, making horror shorts, or kind of horror inflected shorts for many years, had never kind of been, almost kind of weirdly, looking back, I don't really understand how I could have not been aware of this, the huge horror scene that there is, kind of globally, but just had never really kind of not broken into, it's the wrong word, but had never kind of partaken of it. So so it's been an amazing kind of 12 months, meeting these great other filmmakers, making friends, getting very drunk with or at them, being told to fuck off by Tim League, that was a highlight. Yeah, it's been it's been a blast. It's been an amazing ride for these 12 months.
Yeah, winning Fantastic Fest was probably a big one. Yeah. That was kind of like it's not that thing that you kind of it kind of just validated amongst relevant people, relevant judges, people who are watching it, and it was beyond our expectations for sure.
Yeah.
It kind of set us up on this ride of screenings and other awards.
Yeah, that is a definite highlight.
And also being able to see it in amazing surroundings. Often, I think I had highlights from seeing how other people view films in different countries is pretty weird at times. So in Fantasia, there's like all this meowing going on when a film comes up, and people just start making meowing sounds.
So half the audience is going shh, shh, and the other half is going meow, meow.
And you look around and say, what's going on? Yeah. So it's seeing it in space. Like some of the audiences are a lot more sort of involved, and they're kind of, I've really enjoyed that, and just seeing how people react to it.
That was very interesting. And I suppose the other question is, because John Boorman, where did John Boorman get to see the film?
Yeah, that's a damned manoeuvre.
Yeah. There was a film festival which was the Cardiff Independent Film Festival, and I think it's their second time it had been run. And they had invited Boorman over, and he showed, I think it was a follow-up to Hope and Glory.
Right.
Yeah, it's like something in Queen and Country, is it maybe?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. Yes, that sounds familiar. Yeah, basically,
he screened it there, and he was like a guest. So at that moment, I had my DVDs with me. Like, I've been printing some off just in case there's an opportunity that you just see the opportunity, you want to give someone your DVD, and at times we've had to send them off to festivals anyway. So I was making a few DVDs and Blu-rays, and it's a chance that I'm never really going to get the opportunity to speak to Boorman again. You just kind of go for it, and he was kind enough to watch it, and he gave us some really encouraging sentiment after watching it.
Did he say to you, what was nice as well, I think Dan told me that when Dan had given him the DVD and said, it'd be great if you'd watch this and whatever, and apparently Mr. Boorman said, do you want fluff, or do you want my actual response? Is that right, Sam?
Yeah. What do you want me to say, or do you want me to actually, what's helpful to you? Do you want me to just say some things, or do you actually want to know what I think?
Well, do you want a quote for the back of your thing, or do you actually want my critique, kind of thing?
Yeah,
which was amazing. I mean, when that news came through that he liked it and said nice things about it, I immediately went and watched one of my favourite sequences in all cinema, which is from Point Blank, with Lee Marvin walking down the corridor, and then it's intercut. Where the sequence, and then you can his footsteps echoing over these different cuts of the woman that he's then going to kind of burst in on, having her hair done and all of that. And I was just like, yes.
It's a long time since I've seen a Boorman film, but I really want to go back and watch one. And I think Point Blank's, I don't know if we've got it, but definitely.
And Excalibur as well is another one of his, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. I remember seeing Excalibur when it first came out.
Yeah.
Deliverance. Yeah. And Deliverance.
Yeah, he's actually, his work is, you don't hear an awful lot of him recently.
No.
But the breadth of his work.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think the one that had his son Charlie in.
Emerald Forest?
Emerald Forest, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I remember going to see these things at the cinema when they first came out and going, what's he done now?
Mm.
Yeah. But he's an old guy, isn't he? He's like 80. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's the end of our time. I don't believe we've got any other questions coming in, but gentlemen, thank you so very much
Thank you.
for joining me. I always said that talking about the stomach just before Christmas, the week before Christmas, is the most appropriate show I could think of.
We'll make a Christmas special.
Yeah. So if you missed it, folks, this is what you should be sitting down to watch immediately after you've eaten on Christmas Day. Just watch the stomach.
I think it'd make a good present for someone. You know?
I think a great present for somebody. It'd be a great present for somebody. And actually, just to answer a question that did come up, there was a comment made just before the show came up. I just did a bit of checking. One of the guys was saying that it's a shame they can't rent the film; they have to buy it. On iTunes, you can't rent short films. You can only buy short films, and they do, last from 7 minutes to how long is the stomach?
It's 15 minutes to the frame, because some festivals won't take films over 15 minutes.
Including all your credits.
It's literally, including all the credits. It's to the frame.
So 15 minutes to the frame. So for the same, 7 minutes or 15 minutes for the stomach, it seems like a really good deal to me for $1.99, I think, or £1.99.
Yeah, whatever that is in dollars.
Yeah, $3.99, I think, or £1.99. I think it's a damn good way of spending your money. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Have a really pleasant Christmas and New Year, and and hopefully see you with the next short film. Oh, sorry, the next feature film. Your next.
Yes, yeah, and when can we expect the Night Whispers to?
Well, as I say, I'm touching wood as I say this. My editor and I hope to have almost no, we won't have picture lock by Christmas. We were aiming to get picture lock, but I need to do some pickup shots, which are not going to happen until the middle of the week. So I don't think we're going to have picture lock, but certainly by the new year we should have picture lock. The composer's more or less doing his stuff, then I've just got to do sound as well. Fortunately, that shouldn't require it. I think maybe a little bit of VFX just to tidy up some things. I think remove my face from one of the shots. I'm in the distance, it's easy. Teeny tiny. So yeah, the aim is to be submitting into festivals.
I'd recommend John Boorman if you need someone. I think he could do a good job for you.
Oh, brilliant! I will pick you up on that, sir. I will.
Well, so it's not like having to go to a facility, So yeah, I'd recommend.
Oh, cool! I shall bear that in mind. Thank you very much indeed. And you will be one of the first to see the secret screeners when I start sending them out, because I'll want quotations from you famous filmmakers. You very, very successful short filmmakers. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. This has been Chattering with Nicholas Vince. I've been chattering with Ben and Dan. Would you like to say good night, gentlemen?
Good night.
Good night.
Mr. Wall.
Good morning, and for those of you in Canada, I'm always suddenly reminded. This has been Chattering with Nicholas Vince. I will see you all in the new year, folks. Have a very happy Christmas and a very safe new year, and have a great time and don't eat too much. Okay, good night, folks. Goodbye.